Mr. Valluri, thank you for taking the time out and speaking to ETH Insights. It's a pleasure to have you in this conversation.
Thank you. My pleasure to talk to you. It's always been good interacting with you.
Thank you. Let me begin by asking you, when we are talking about automated security operations, what are the constants and challenges organizations face while implementing, and if so, how can these be overcome?
Security today is a very complex scenario,
Right.
because people are using absolutely the latest and the greatest technologies that are available. More than the customers, the adversaries are using it a lot more. So there is enough and more funding, there is enough and more motivation to earn money. There's also a lot of people are looking at it as a source of income, including few nation states. So it's quite complex. As a result of that, you are dealing with adversaries who are very, very advanced, use sophisticated AI, ML technologies, really high-end compute capabilities, a lot of network capabilities. So they have unlimited resources virtually. So that leads us to a situation where you're dealing with, I'll give an example. If an attack were to happen earlier, somebody would infiltrate you, and you would take 30, 40 days for the data to be exfiltrated out of your system. That was the level of sophistication that existed. They had to find out the paths, the passwords, all that, routes, access models. But today, if a breach happens, the exfiltration can happen in a matter of hours.
Right.
So you don't have the time and luxury to stay back and say, let me figure out. If breach happens, I can go and seek help. It is better to detect early and remediate early. So earlier, the mean time to detect was in matter of stretching anywhere from days to weeks, and remediation would take from weeks to months.
Right.
So the whole nature of the cyber threats have changed. Therefore, and also the ability to find attack paths. There is now AI capabilities that you can have, attackers have. They can find out any vulnerability in a matter of minutes.
Right.
So earlier they used to send bots and find out something didn't work. Okay, let me try this, let me try that. Now it's so automated and so driven by AI ML capabilities that they can find an attack path so quickly. One small vulnerability is enough. So given that, the ability for an organization or government or individual, what have you, to detect a threat is absolutely imperative, that is very quickly, and then be able to remediate it. And at the level of number of attacks that are happening, you don't have the luxury of saying, okay, I've got one attack, I solved it, maybe the next one will happen another month later. No. It can happen the next minute, the next minute,
Absolutely.
the next minute. So to give an example, Palo Alto networks handle something like 35 billion threats every day.
Oh, that's massive.
It used to be few billion, then it went to 3.5 billion, now we are 35 billion. Out of which we stop around 11 billion attacks every day. Rest are some false positives and so on. Out of that, we see about 1 million plus are new threats unknown to us. Okay, so typically we encounter almost 1 million new threats every day. That's the level of innovation that's happening on the adversary side. How are they able to do it? Because they are using all kinds of tools that are available, whether it is generative AI models that are meant for attackers, ransomware as a service, all kinds of things. So the only way we can counter AI threats is by using AI. And that leads us to this question of autonomous AI. autonomous security, right?
Right.
Autonomous SOC.
Right.
If you don't have that, then it is unlikely that you will be able to defend effectively. Manually, there are enough studies to say manually the efficacy rate is 60%. If you automate it, you're really close to 80, 90%, 90 plus percent. And any SOC also is dependent on analysts who were deployed to figure out A, B, C, threat level 1, threat level 2, threat level 3, and so on, and say, and then this fatigue that sets in and say, okay, to hell with it, I'll figure out what I know is a threat, I'll stop it, test, I don't know, have the ability to handle it anymore.
Right.
You can't scale by adding people.
Right.
So that's the genesis of the autonomous SOC. Right? And the ability to create a autonomous SOC model is that you have lot of security tools in your organization who are able to talk to each other, who are able to feed telemetry, and any untoward patterns or any patterns that are looking strange and different and suspicious. And then you put it together, and then somebody can do the AI ML modeling on it and say, I can figure out there's something wrong. So the imperative is that you should have different security tools all able to talk to each other. But the industry has always been that we buy best of breed, we buy from different vendors. This is for good for this, something is good for that. And when you buy the good, but each one has its own upgrade cycles, innovation cycles, and so on. They stop talking to each other. They stop getting upgraded. Some of them go out of business. Some of them get acquired. Some of them they just disappear. So a lot of customers, and we know typical customers have in excess of 30 to 40 different vendors in an enterprise. So first thing is we should have security tools which talk to each other, are able to exchange information, and then ability to put it together in a data lake, and then do AI-based security operations, and then it makes autonomous. So for a question that I have long-winded answer, but that's the genesis of why we're saying autonomous SOC is important. The only way you can counter AI threats is by defending with AI.
Interestingly, you talked about the early detection and quick response and how AI plays a part in this. A lot of emerging technologies that are actually complementing AI. So is there anything particular you can talk about that is a robust technology that can help in this cybersecurity journey?
See, if you look at an organization, we call it attack surface. The attack surface has, an organization has cloud presence. You have to secure your things on the cloud. Then you have applications which you need to secure. Then you are using SaaS vendors. You need to secure that part. Then you have users who are connecting remotely, locally in the inner data center, outside your office premises, from their homes, from their cafes, from airports. You need to secure that access. Then you have different devices. People are using different devices, your own mobile phones, your own laptops, tablets, what have you. They need to be secure. You don't have control today of saying, I will put an agent on your mobile, I'll put an agent on your home system, I will put an agent on your iPad or a tablet. We should be able to secure all of these devices, different access models, different applications, different SaaS applications, different clouds, and that is all constitute what we call as the attack surface. So it is not enough that you secure one part and ignore the other part. You need to have a comprehensive view of security. And when we do all of that, for example, in Palo Alto, we do Prisma Cloud, which does cloud security. We do Prisma SASE, which does remote access. Then Cortex, which does all the devices. Then what you call the Cortex XIM, which is the autonomous SOC engine. All of that are AI infused today. We just launched a slew of offerings around an umbrella called Precision AI. Precision AI consists of machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI, all of them under the umbrella of precision AI. And it allows you to detect, allows you to remediate, allows you to suggest, sometimes auto heal, sometimes also point out something is wrong. And this is across the whole product suite that we are talking about. And that helps because we are able to talk to each other, we are able to exchange telemetry, incidents, events, what have you, and make sense out of it. Because random events happening on, say, on somebody's mobile, or random event happening on somebody's application, or a random event happening on a particular application behavior, can have a longer term impact on something else, which need to be correlated. It cannot be ignored and said it's a small thing, it's random. At the same time, now organizations have started using a lot of generative AI tools, right? And most of these tools, when people, you remember we used to have shadow IT. People would go and buy cloud instances on their credit card and start using. Similarly, in organizations, people are buying their own, using generative AI tools to do their own thing, without realizing that whatever they are doing with respect to the organization, that data is in public domain. Right. So if you're doing something related to your IP, your patents, and your what you have core competencies, you are putting it all together in the public domain. So we have now models, AI tools to secure that level of it. So you don't have users going and freely using everything without risking this whole data leaks, right? So we now have AI which will containerize the whole thing. You are able to use your own data, but keep it in your own environment, not go into public domain. So we are able to now offer technologies which will allow people to not stop. They continue to use the generative AI stuff, but in a controlled fashion, where you're not leaking your essential and confidential information out into public domain. So those are all of that put together is what we need to have to be able to put together a AI and ML driven security architecture or solution, what you call it. But it requires a mindset, it requires comprehensive view of security, and it requires one to be not just deploy tools, but people to be one of the most essential pieces of people to be aware and are doing the right things. There's a lot of education, there's constant updation of the knowledge, and what can a threat do to you from a reputation standpoint, from financial loss, from leaking of confidential information, highly IP related stuff. So it's a mindset. I would always say security is a mindset. Products will be there, technologies will be there, but people are very essential.
While we've discussed about cybersecurity measures, one of the most critical aspect is the stakeholders and the collaboration that is required. So is there an SOP or some best standard in industry practices in place to ensure that this entire operation happens very seamlessly, in case of a standard operation or if there's an attack happening?
So this is a paradox that exists. There are many standards, there are many compliance and regulatory prescriptions that exist for different industries. Even at a security practice level, there are these things that people say that you need to go through this, put in place. You need to detect, you need to manage, you need to remediate, all of that stuff. But what happens is compliance, you'll only be compliant. That doesn't mean you are secure. So take, for example, a RBI and a SEBI, they have regulations. They're saying that you need to be doing this. Just because you tick all of that doesn't mean you are secure.
Absolutely.
You need to go beyond. Compliance will tell you these are essential stuff that are required to make yourself capable of protecting. Right? But each enterprise, each implementation, the application that you use, the way you use, people who are interacting with it, their own rigor on security, they all will come into play. Therefore, NIST standards, there are lots of standards that are available. Okay, so and there are, we can give you the details of what those standards are and how to implement it. But suffice to say, is one thing that I will say, zero trust is something which we all recommend to be used. That is, no explicit trust and no implicit trust. Right? So you need to really validate at every point in time who you are saying what you are. Do you have access to that application? Do you have access to the data? Do you have access to this particular application? Right. Do you have to have access to this functionality? So the zero trust is about the operating at the 7 layers: device, app, user ID, and recheck every time. Earlier the model was you authenticate somebody and comes in, you are saying this person is good, and they could do whatever they are. People would move laterally across and move data and have access to things, and they could breach. But now it's saying no, if you are an employee, if you have access to a certain set of applications, you have no way of you to authenticate yourself every time you access an application. B, do you have access to very confidential payroll data? Do you have confidential access to some customer data? So revalidate, do you have access to that? So all of that is checked now, and that's how zero trust based model that people are saying, and we recommend highly that one should implement across the board. So there is no what we call concept of least privilege access. Everybody is least privilege. Only when you authenticate and prove yourself who you are at that instant, then you get an access.
Right. One last question, Mr. Valluri. How do you see the cybersecurity landscape in the coming years? And with regards to that, is there any key areas where Palo Alto is working on with regards to the cybersecurity landscape?
Cybersecurity, to my mind, is now one of the most evolved and also the most dynamic industry technologically. Lots of innovation is happening on both sides. Right? And our CEO Nikesh Arora says we are at the beginning of the innovation on cybersecurity. The next 10 years of innovation will happen to both sides. Right?
So it's a journey.
It's a journey. Right. So cybersecurity is always a journey. It's all about, you got to be right all the time, and somebody has to be right only once. Right? Right. So that being that as the backdrop, we need to constantly innovate. We need to constantly be outsmarting the other side. We need to predict where the puck is going.
Right.
Right. And combine that with the organization which is looking to secure themselves with people, process, technology, all of that. Otherwise, it's just not possible that you deploy technology and relax and say everything is taken care of. It's always evolving, and we see a lot of things are happening in front of our eyes. The whole OT, IoT is a big inflection in the landscape. Similarly, the 5G is a big inflection point, because you are going to get lots of devices, get bandwidth, be able to do that. And the whole AI ML itself will play out both on the defender side as well as the attacker side. Right. And now the code generators and auto code generators that you have now can generate spam and so on very easily. The deepfakes, both audios, videos, and what have you, that's going to continue to have. How do you now defend that part, and how do you figure this out? Similarly, the whole cloud adoption has itself added another vector into this whole cybersecurity. The SaaS models have added security. So it has to be always holistic. It has to be very measured, and we cannot just go and onboard something which is unknown. We got to go through the rigor of really certifying and figuring out, is it secure by design? So what we are really saying is the whole model of cybersecurity now got to be secure by design from an AI standpoint, right? Otherwise, it's a long haul, but each one is trying to do. We are very clear that we want to offer holistic solutions to customers. The attack surface is always, as I said, every device you add adds more to the attack surface, and be able to exchange information, be able to use the latest and the greatest tools. Plus, the advantage that Palo Alto brings is we have petabytes and exabytes of data, signatures, patterns, what we have over the last so many years of our existence. We have that as a reference tool, and whole deployments connected on a network, on a cloud, gives us instant ability to triangulate and say, this is a pattern that we know we've seen it elsewhere. This is something which we have seen it elsewhere, and stop, right? And there is this whole concept of there is a zero customer who always gets impacted. Now we're trying to figure out how can we stop even the zero customer. There's even the first customer, then you know that somebody else you can prevent the other one. So how do you stop 0 and 1 customers?
On that note, Mr. Valluri, thank you very much for your wonderful insights. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Bye.